Greetings and welcome to the first annual Pacific Northwest Multicultural Leaders Series and Film Festival, powered by Zoom Catchers. Now, we're so pleased to introduce Ken Boddie, morning news anchor for KOIN TV in Portland, who will introduce our guest, Javon Johnson. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Ken, take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It is my pleasure to speak with Javon Johnson, actor, writer, director, producer, acting coach. He's a founding member and resident playwright of the Congo Square Theater Company in Chicago. He's got a master's degree from the University of Pittsburgh and a degree from South Carolina State, a native of Anderson, South Carolina. Those of you who watch Tyler Perry's The Oval know that Javon Johnson stars as Richard Halson. It's the #1 show on BET, and it revolves around goings-on in and around the White House. And there is some real mess going on in and around the White House. Just think, scandal, House of Cards on steroids with a lot of Black people thrown in for some extra flavor. So it's an amazing show. We'll talk about that and the Tyler Perry connection during the course of the seminar. We'll also talk about Javon Johnson's vast experience in local stage and filmmaking, your national and international experience. You have your own production company. You have performed on Broadway. There are so many items on your resume that would take up this entire webinar. So I'll leave it at that for now, and we'll get to some other stuff during the course of our conversation. So let me just say, welcome Javon Johnson to PNMC, and let's chop it up. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ken. Thank you, man. Looking forward to the conversation. Oh,
absolutely. Viewers, as was mentioned, you can submit questions during the course of this webinar through the chat function, and we'll answer questions at the end of the conversation. I want to talk just initially about the film short, After the Rose, that you submitted to the PNMC. It played yesterday during the festival. What did you want to say about domestic violence in that short? And what about Julian's journey in that short for people who have seen it?
Oh, okay, good. Well, in terms of what's being said about domestic violence, is that sometimes it's atypical, sometimes it's not what you assume it is. We tend to stereotype what domestic violence looks like, and we assume a lot of things. So in the film After the Rose, with Julian's case, it's not quite what you probably thought it would be or who it would be, and for the reasons why. So in Julian's case, we're dealing with also how do you process through trauma? How do you get beyond carrying over some of the traumas that you have in your life? And then, oftentimes those who have been victimized tend to victimize others in the same way. So Julian's journey is about coming to terms with what he's been through, and also detaching himself from that trauma so that he don't become an abuser himself.
When you look at your career, what does doing film shorts like this, how does that fit into that? What brought you to that method of production?
Well, just being a content creator is powerful in this industry. A lot of times when you're just an artist, typically when you're just an actor, for say, you tend to have to wait on somebody else to give you an opportunity, which also puts you in the most vulnerable position, which oftentimes make actors very desperate. And they tend to feel like, oh, well, this is, you get an audition, you're like, I got to do this. This is a big opportunity. If I don't get this, then I don't know when the next one's going to be there. So he puts you in a state of being desperate. Sometimes you become opportunistic sometimes. But when you become a content creator and a producer and those type of avenues, you begin to empower yourself in this industry, because if the writer doesn't write, the actor doesn't act. If the producer don't produce, projects don't get done, actors that don't have jobs. So when you create content, you're also creating opportunities and putting food on other people's tables and giving people's career opportunities. So beyond that, just exercising the creative muscle also, because it doesn't matter where you are in your career, you can always create short films or web series and the smaller projects to build your web to larger projects. All of that is creative exercising. And also it gives you a voice. As an actor, you tend to pretty much always have to say what somebody else is saying. Somebody else wrote that, and you're lending your spirit to the work, and you're bringing what you can bring to the work. But the core of it is somebody else's voice, somebody else's story, somebody else's creativity that you're lending your skills to and your heart to. But when you become a content creator, you get to say what you want to say, and that's empowering. So for me, it's all about being a content creator.
How did you get into this? How did you get into this business, this industry?
I was led into it faithfully. I didn't know. Chadwick Boseman and I are from Anderson, South Carolina. Everybody knows Chadwick Boseman, mostly from the Black Panther. He's left us too soon, obviously. But we come from a culture of it's automotive, textile industry. It's nursing. It's young Black men in my neighborhood didn't talk about being actors or being entertainment other than sports. We weren't talking about playing college football or basketball. And if there was entertainment, you was talking about the church, singing in the church. The most we would get maybe is the local rappers, local bands and things like that. So the ideal of being in television and films wasn't a part of our childhood vernacular. It wasn't a dream that we shared with each other, no aspirations. So for me, I was going the track of playing football. Was getting recruited for college football, realized I didn't like the sport as much as I liked playing with people I grew up with. And I thought that, man, if I was one of the fortunate ones to get to the NFL at that time, Ray Lewis would be there and James Harrington would be there. And I'm like, I'm a wide receiver. I don't know if I want to live my life like that, being, target, guys come and trying to take my head off every week. So I was like, I don't love the game like that. But my high school choir teacher, Ms. Laura Keefe, called me in and she said, you're going to college. And I was like, at the time, college wasn't something that was a part of my family. I was raised on my mother's side of the family. And I was the first she got me a scholarship, a choir scholarship, and I can't sing. But that wasn't the point. The point was she said, I'm going to college. So I ended up at South Carolina State University on a choir scholarship. One of the first in my family to go to college. And most of my family had a high school diploma degree or less. And every day I was walking by the Henderson Davis Theater, and it was this big building in the middle of campus. And it was something about that building it was like I was being called to it. So I would walk by and resist the calling. And finally I said, let me go in and see what's in this building. Long story short, I went in, got a theater scholarship, gave up the choir scholarship, became the theater president. And I was kind of just on a journey that wasn't under my control. I kind of just stayed out of my own way. And I allowed whatever was happening with me to happen. And I was kind of like, a lot of it was an out of body type of experience. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I here? But I wasn't getting in the way of it either. I was there for the journey. So now, in retrospect, I see why I was there and why I was going through these things. But I just tried to stay out the way and let God do what he was doing, and having faith that it was what I was supposed to do.
Did it feel natural as soon as you started doing it?
It felt natural. It felt like it wasn't a struggle, being in shows, acting, it wasn't a struggle. It felt like, the right thing. But, it wasn't a thing where I felt like this is my calling. I didn't feel like that. I just felt like this is just what I'm doing right now. Because, the talent for that and aspiration for that came very late for me. Again, because I was coming from a culture, a community where it wasn't a part of the culture. So it wasn't instilled in me very early on. So I kind of fell into it and I allowed myself to fall into it. But at some point I recognized that, okay, this is I'm in alignment with what my gifts are. And this is what I should really focus on and put a lot of effort towards cultivating for myself.
Was there any particular moment where that solidified for you, either a performance that you did or a performance that you saw where you're like, okay, this is it?
I think there was two pivotal moments for me. One being when I was in high school, a friend of mine asked me to replace her partner who had dropped out on her with the speech and debate tournament. And she only asked me because I was a class clown. So she thought I had the personality for it. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's my friend, but I didn't know what it was. And she was competing in the duo interpretation category, which is two actors interpreting a scene without movement. And so the scene she was doing was A Raisin in the Sun beneath an assegai. I didn't really know much about it. So I'm doing it and we were competing and we get adjudicated separately. So we get to see our scorecards, and her scorecard looked great, and mine was, it was terrible. And I realized, and I began to see the disappointment on her face because she was used to being very competitive. And I was like, man, I'm letting her down. Like, this is on me. Like, I'm really pulling her back. I felt bad about it, but I didn't know anything about acting. And so I was watching The Color Purple, and I had the script, I had the scene, the Raising the Sun scene next to me. And I'm trying to figure out what this acting thing is. And I'm watching The Color Purple, and I see Danny Glover as Mr. And in that moment of watching Danny Glover, I said, that's what acting is. That's what I got to do. I got to do what he's doing. Now, when I look back at that, I had no intellectual understanding of what that meant in terms of technique and craft and all the stuff that we studied. At that time, I only knew a Black man on TV fully giving himself over to a character, into that world. And I believed every moment of it. And I said, that's what I have to do to this Asa guy character. I have to give everything I have in an honest way. And that's what I did. And that's all I knew. And that year we were first runner-up in the state. And then the following year, we won the state championship. But even that, it's something she asked me to do. I never looked at that and said, oh, I'm gonna be an actor now. I got a talent for this. It was just something that I did. The next pivotal moment for me was when I was at South Carolina State University. I booked my first professional theater gig at Hilton Head Playhouse, and that was a production of August Wilson's film Fences, in which I played Corey Maxson. And that has such a profound effect on me. I tell August Wilson, I had a relationship with August Wilson when he was with us, and I told him I met him before I met him. And what I meant by that was, when I did Fences, I didn't know what it really felt like to be an African American, really, in that capacity. I didn't really have a father, and I felt like I had a father when I did that play. I felt like I had a purpose. I felt like being African American meant something, and I felt like I identified with the struggle of these characters, and it elevated me as a Black man. At that time, a young Black boy, really, because I'm still like I'm a sophomore in undergrad, but it just opened me up spiritually to another way of feeling about being Black and feeling whole in that, in my own skin. So that gave me purpose and intent in terms of being an actor. And I think that was the moment where it really glued me to the track that I was on doing that production.
You said you had a relationship with August Wilson. How did that develop? And what did that do for your life and for the progression of your career?
It's hard to give words to somebody as big and as accomplished as August Wilson. I mean, he was a giant for us, in terms of, a lot of people like to say he was our Shakespeare, in terms of Black writers. That's how huge he was. I struggled a lot once I started writing, because I had a very organic experience with becoming a writer, because at that time I was only an actor, only focused on being an actor. The writing came to me in a very surreal way, in a way that I resisted, because I never kind of processed something in that way. So I resisted it. But once I started writing, I started to struggle with August's influence on my work, because I didn't have my own voice. And at some point, about my third play into it, I literally I was in Pittsburgh at this time, and which of course we know was August Wilson's childhood hometown and everything, where he grew up. So I'm in Pittsburgh at the University of Pittsburgh, and I'm writing in my little basement apartment. I'll just tell you about an experience. And I totally got lost in this world of writing. And I lost track of time. I lost track of where I was. And I was writing, and then I came out of it, and I literally turned around and looked behind me, because I thought August was in the room. I physically turned, and I was like, what am I doing? And I looked back at what I wrote. I was like, I didn't even know what I wrote. And I went back and read it. And I said, this is, I didn't write this, and I said, this is too much of August's presence on me. So that was my first major writer's block experience, and I stopped writing. I would then later meet August Wilson at the Edward Albee Theater Conference in Valdez, Alaska. Edward Albee would handpick a playwright and the director that he would honor. And that year they were honoring August Wilson. I also had a play in the competition, which was my first play, called Papa's Blues, which won the Lorraine Hansberry Award at the Kennedy Center. But they also needed Black actors, because they had a shortage of Black actors in Alaska. So there was a lot of variables there that brought me to Alaska, and that's where I would meet August. That's not the first time I met him, actually it was the second time. But this is the time where I really had a conversation with him, and I told him, I said, "Listen, I'm having writer's block because of your influence on my work is so strong, and I don't want to feel like I'm trying to emulate and be you." And he said to me, we grow up in a society that identifies something new with something that already exists in a society of labels. And he said that when he started writing and he was coming up, in his career, he was being compared to the O'Neills and other writers before him. And he said, "Don't worry about any of that. Just be honest and tell your story." And when he said that to me, it released all that for me. And I then sat down to write a play called Hambone, which was my conscious purging of August Wilson's influence on my work. And so Hambone, anybody who knows that play, if you see that play, it's my most August Wilsonist play. But it was a purging of his influence on my work. And then that began the transition for me to start to find my own voice as a writer. So that was the point that turned for me. So that's kind of a little snippet of my relationship with August Wilson. And then he came to my play. My play reading was at 9 a.m. in the morning. And apparently I didn't know that August Wilson coming to a reading at 9 a.m. in the morning was a big deal until everybody at the festival was stopping me and saying, "Hey, August Wilson was at your reading at 9 in the morning? He never does that for anybody." I was like, okay, well, I guess I should appreciate that a little more than I am because I didn't know. And then at the end of the week, ironically, August Wilson gets his award and I actually win the playwriting competition. So we're both posing in Alaska with our awards, and it goes back and it gets the cover of Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and the whole Javon Johnson, August Wilson image together thing started to happen.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. You're an acting coach as well. Right. And I'm listening to what you're saying about finding your own voice as a writer. Does that same concept apply to actors?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a little different, I think, in terms of acting coaches, because one thing I think a lot of acting coaches in schools miss is the most important part of the equation, which is the instrument, and the instrument is you. So a lot of times you go to acting schools and you get with coaches, and the most important thing is the technique, is the method, is the book. Mm-hmm. I don't use textbooks, right? Because I've studied a lot of these methods, and in a lot of ways, a lot of these are variations of the other, and they're saying the same thing in different ways. So you feel like you're getting something new, but you're really getting a variation of something that's already been established. So my focus is about how do we get you in touch with you, because you can be a technically sound actor, and I'm totally not moved by what you do, because I see technique. I see that you're grounded in the technique, and I see you're an expert at the technique, but the spirit of the work you're doing is not reaching me. So my approach to it all is targeting your authentic self, and your authentic self is about what one of the questions I ask my students all the time is, why are you here? Typically what happens is they'll say, well, I'm here because I looked you up and I've seen your credits, and I'm here because I want to get better. You get these kind of answers. And then I ask, okay, that's fine, but why are you here in life? And all of a sudden they get silent, because if you're not connecting why you're here in life, then what do you have to say in the work? And for me, that's where the important part, the most important part, is getting your instrument fine-tuned and aligned, and give purpose and intent in yourself. And so that when you bring yourself to the work, you're coming to the work with a fully realized person. Because some of us don't know who we are. Some of us haven't dealt with our blocks. Some of us have not dealt with things in our past. So when you get a character that's trying to reach deep, you're not accessible. You don't have what you need to bring to that character. So if you look at a Viola Davis, it looks like Viola Davis giving you all her life in her performances. That's what I'm about. I'm about, you got to be empty. You got to be able to empty your tank in a performance. You got to be able to be extremely vulnerable and open, and tell all your secrets, knowing that they will be secrets after you tell them. Tell all of your pain, all of your love, all your aspirations, all your ambitions, everything you can't talk about openly in life to people sometimes. Tell it in your work, right? So we're not just getting an actor who's technical, we're getting a human being that's telling us some stuff with their spirit, with their heart, and with their passion. And so that's my focus is the instrument, which is you. We got to get that together first. And the thing that I realized, unfortunately, and a lot of us are dealing with, we don't have self-value because it's either been taken from us or we believe that it never existed, that we're not worth anything. And so you can't give you all of who I am if I don't think I'm worth it in the first place, which means
Right.
I don't think there's no value in what my experience is. So if I meet you, Ken, and I don't find the true worth of myself, you're probably getting 60% of me in the experience, because there's 40% of me that don't believe in myself or that I'm worthy of anything or have anything of value to you. So that's my approach to the work, is getting people in themselves, truly in their voice, truly in their value, in their worth, and knowing that they have greatness in them.
Yeah, the athletic correlation to that would be, the old phrase, you got to leave it all on the field or you got to leave it all on the
Absolutely.
court. Same kind of thing when you're talking about professions like ours. Let's talk Tyler Perry. Let's talk the Oval.
Yeah.
Man, I've been binge watching that for the past couple of days. And I am just amazed at the twists and the turns and the craziness that goes on. What's it like to work on a show like that?
First of all, man, it's not your conventional way of working. Tyler, if anybody has worked with Tyler, particularly on his series or now his movies also, you know that Tyler does things the way Tyler does them, not necessarily how the industry does them. And what I mean by that is, typically it takes 7 to 10 days to shoot one episode of a 1 hour drama, right? So you look at it, if you do 20 episodes, 7 to 10 days, like that's months and months of shooting. Tyler shoots 22 episodes in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's almost unfathomable when you think about it. But we shoot an entire season in 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days. So just that in itself is just, sometimes you don't believe you did it. Like when it's over, you're like, did that just happen? Like, did we survive that? We actually did a whole series, and you just can't process it sometimes. And so that's the biggest. One, it's exciting, it's challenging, but it can be frustrating too if you're not prepared, because you really got to be prepared to go into that type of situation, because there's no room for anything else other than keeping that train rolling and getting through those shoots. Another thing too, a lot of people may not be aware of, oftentimes we're only getting one take, and some of those takes are not rehearsed. So a lot of what you're seeing on the show is the actor stepping into that for the first time with the cameras rolling, and whatever happens, which is not necessarily typical. But a lot of people are not aware of that either. So, but all of that, can be exciting, but it's also very challenging too, as well, because actors, we want to give our best performances, and sometimes we feel like we missed that moment. But that moment is gone. We're on to the next scene. You're like, oh man, can I just get another take? Come on. I've actually begged Tyler a couple of times for another take. And he's like, no, that's great. Let's go. We're moving on. It's okay. We got to get ready for the next scene.
Yeah. How does that change your approach to the craft itself? Knowing that you might not get that third take or that fourth take. How does that change your approach?
For me, I have to adjust my expectations and standards, right, in terms of what I do and process, right? Because I say it like this: if I'm a sprinter, right, my best time, if I'm doing 100 meter, and my best time is 11 seconds in normal conditions. If the condition changes, if the weather changes, if there's ice on the track, then I got to adjust my expectations. I can't keep expecting to do that 11 seconds when there's ice on the tracks. So I have to adjust how I see the whole experience. And so my expectations for myself are in correlation with the situation, which is this is a one take situation. So I'm gonna be satisfied with what I get with that opportunity, as opposed to, I'm not gonna hold myself to what I would get if I had 3 or 4 takes, or if I had days of rehearsals, because I drive myself crazy if I did that. So I gotta recognize the situation first, and I gotta adjust to the situation. These are not the normal circumstances here. So let me adjust my expectations according to the situation, so I can maintain my sanity in the process. And then the other part of it is being as prepared as you can before you get in there, because you don't have time for preparation once you get started. So you do as much pre-work as possible, and you just hope that those things land when the cameras are rolling. and when you're in the scenes. And that's the best you can do for me. Some other castmates may have a different perspective on that, but that's how it works for me.
Your live theater experience probably helps you with that.
Oh, absolutely. And for what I know about TPS Studios, they love actors who have live theater experience, because I think we do have a bit of an advantage, or a little bit more grounded. We're a little more grounded in the journey of that. Because a lot of theater just demands so much of you as an actor that you prepare for that kind of in the moment type of scenario, and crafting of a total character arc and all those kind of things that we're used to doing in live theater. We have more time to really get in there and get into the craft of it. So I think we're a little more conditioned to handle the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler Perry, for those of us on the outside looking in, has a reputation for creating opportunities for people, especially people of color. Have you seen that played out?
Oh, it's amazing, man. I think I'm not sure he gets as much credit or appreciation as he should. I know some people do recognize it, but there's not another African-American entertainment in the industry in my lifetime that I know has done as much as he's done for people of color in the industry on his own, and on his own terms. There are a lot of people I know that have careers that are, buying homes, feeding a family. And if you take TPS out of the equation, they probably would not have that opportunity based on how the industry has been operating. So he takes a look at people that the industry has not taken a look at, or would not have given a chance to. And I just think that, that's amazing. And we just have to recognize him for that part of his greatness and service to his people. And it's not just people of color. It's not like we go there and it's like everybody's of people of color. There's others, but he does make sure that we get something, that we come into the table,
that we're represented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is just my own individual curiosity, man. But what is it like to work at those studios in Atlanta? Because, we in the news business, we covered, when that studio was built, Oprah did the tour and the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it just looks amazing, man. So just give me a feel for what it's like to work in that facility.
Oh, man, it feels good, man. It feels good. The main building there is called the Dream Building, and you feel like it's true. You don't feel like that's just something they put on the building. You feel like it is literally that. Like this whole, the history of the grounds, turn of the Confederacy there, and him taking,
Mm-hmm.
buying this property as a Black man, and even that history itself, like what that symbolizes. It's just amazing. We was there the first season, just watching the White House being constructed. Every day we come by, we see a little piece of it come up, and it was like just watching that process happen. And it's like, is this really happening? Is this White House is really going to be here? And then finally it's there, and we're like, come on inside. We walk into this thing like he actually did this, right? So Tyler is doing some things that almost seems unimaginable at times. And you kind of have to try to grasp the reality of this man is doing this. I remember the opening ceremony that he had of TPS. It was just breathtaking. I mean, you had everybody there, Bill Clinton, Oprah, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett, all these people, all these great, amazing people there. And he's honoring them with names, with studios named after them. And you're walking through this, and he got all these fireworks, and Jennifer Hudson, everybody's performing, Mary J. Blige. Like, it's just like, you think about this, you say, Tyler did this? Like in Atlanta? Like, this is something we think we go to LA for, and some big event, but he just did this on his property here in Atlanta. And it's just amazing. It's just amazing what he's doing. And what's even more amazing to me is he just doesn't seem to have any cap. Like you think about him, like, when is this man going to stop? Like, when is he going to reach a point where he maxed out? And it's like, he just keeps going and just keeps going. It's like, just keep doing more and more impossible things that we didn't think a Black man would do in this industry.
Yeah, and the connection with BET is amazing as well, because even now the Oval, Tyler Perry's The Oval going into the third season. It's been renewed for a third season, correct?
Right, absolutely.
And there's already, after the first two seasons, spinoffs, and he's doing other shows as well. Really putting BET Plus back on the map, back in the forefront of the streaming services. So it's been great to watch, just as a Black man from the outside looking in, looking at what's happening there. let's talk a little bit about opportunities for people of color in the industry, because, you know, Hollywood especially has been known for, you know, we've got a certain number of people that are doing certain things, and that's all we need, you know. So do you think that those barriers are being broken now with the help of Tyler Perry and others? But do you think that we're getting more of our due in the film industry?
Yeah, I think with Tyler, you really got to recognize Tyler for being his own power and his own entity. Like he's really separate of what we normally see as Hollywood. So, and that's to be commended, you know, to be able to even get yourself in a position where you can do your thing and create your own thing and create this for other people as well. But when we talk about typical Hollywood, I think right now, I think we're farther away from the token Negro syndrome that we have in Hollywood, where there's only one can get in, which I think also made us not really look out for one another in the Hollywood Black community. Sometimes we feel like there's only space, there's only enough room for one of us. So I got to be that one, and I got to make sure you ain't getting in front of me.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is, you know, we can go farther back down the history in terms of why we behave that way sometimes, but particularly in that, I think it created this way of we dealing with each other as artists of color in terms of having limited opportunities and fighting for that one spot for ourselves. But I think today we're in a place where the women of color, I believe, are in the most powerful position they've ever been in Hollywood. Because typically when you have somebody like Oprah, we only had one. You know, we had one woman. It's like, okay, it's Oprah's world. But now we got Ava DuVernay, we got Lena Waithe, we got a number of we got Regina King, we got a ton of them now that have a voice in Hollywood, and they're given a platform now to be creators and tell stories, and our stories. We've been fighting for a long time to be able to tell our own narrative, but I think there's been an influx of women of color in position to have a voice, which is amazing, because now that opens up a lot of more opportunities for obviously actors of color, because if we're going to tell our stories, we're also going to cast our people, and we have more opportunities for actors. So I think we're in a very good place. It's interesting to see how far we get along with it, how far this goes, and what it blossoms into. Or, you know, sometimes we get this momentum going and then it stops, and then we got to start the fight all over again. You know what I mean? But I'm hoping that with this momentum we have right now, with some incredible work that's happening right now, you look at you know, what was it? Judah and Messiah. I'm messing up the film. One Night in Miami.
Messiah, I believe it was.
Yeah, Judas and the Messiah. You got One Night in Miami. You got the Central Park one. Remember Me. I think it's. Can't remember.
Remember
the
Us.
name
I think it was.
Remember Us. Remember Us.
Remember Us. Yeah.
You got all of the Jordan Peele stuff that's happening. You know, that he's changing a whole genre of. He's creating a whole new genre in terms of horror, sci-fi, thriller type films that he's doing. So there's a lot of great work that's happening right now that we're not used to. We got more people that's in the works in terms of Blacks getting big major films like, you know, the blockbuster movies. You know, a lot more of that's happening, right? Ryan Coogler and the whole Black Panther and other things that are happening. I just think we're in a good place, a different place that we haven't really been in collectively. And I think if we can just keep that momentum going, it'll be less of that, you know, token syndrome that we've been used to.
Sure. I want to get back to local theater, because Portland has where I'm broadcasting from, has a strong local theater community, Passing Art being one of those local theater companies that is doing well here. In Chicago, what did the pandemic do to local theater, and where are you now in terms of being able to perform and that type thing?
Well, you know, the pandemic has really affected all of us in a very serious way. We've had to adjust in a lot of ways. A lot of local theater really had to learn how to, you know, live theater, we're not really used to all the technical ways of being presentational, but it forced us to start to learn how to do things like this. You know, how to get on a Zoom and how to, you know, manage doing a presentation on Zoom, you know, reading scripts, and a lot of live theater ended up being streamed theater. Sometimes you do it in a live space, but without an audience and distancing the actors, but then you stream it. so people could still get somewhat of an experience, stage experience. So I think live theater just had to become a little more technically savvy in terms of how we can kind of continue to do some aspect of the work we used to doing, because there's nothing like being in a live space, on the live stage with a live audience, because that's what fulfills us. And that's what's special about it. So I think it's been a bit of a struggle in trying to maintain the aesthetic of that, but having to deal with the pandemic at the same time, and not being able to have that one-on-one contact in the same space, especially in large groups. I know I had a couple of shows that I had to cancel because we just couldn't risk going into venues and getting crowds together to see a live production. Was able to pull off a production recently for Bear Fruit Conservatory, which is a school starting in South Carolina area. We were able to do a stage production of my play Crying Shame, which I was proud of because we did get to pull that one off. We had to cancel that twice though before we finally got to do it live. So it's been challenging.
Wouldn't you say though that challenge also opened up some new ways of looking at distribution though?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you take Congo Square Theater Company, which you mentioned earlier, it forced us to start being content creators for the internet. And so we've developed a couple of series that are just for streaming purposes. We have a throwback to the old radio soap opera drama coming out that's called The Clinic, that I'm actually co-wrote with one of our other ensemble members, Monifa Days. So we're very diving deep into how do we expand Congo Square's creative product beyond the live stage, because we obviously are limited to getting on the live stage. So it forced us to exercise a different creative muscle. And it's been exciting, man. It's been exciting to figure it out. It's been exciting to try to decide what type of contact and how to reach, because once you go internet, your reach goes global, as versus,
yes.
As opposed to once you live stage, you really did them with your specific community. But that's a different way to think. It's a different representation of the company. So it's been fascinating to step into that. But obviously we would not have done it had the pandemic not hit. We'd have just lived in the live theater space and probably just loved being there, which is what we do. But it made us think outside the box and do some other things. So we're excited about the products that we have coming out that are streaming services.
Do you anticipate a model where you will have both live in-person production, but augmented by the internet part of it? In other words, do your live thing with the audience there, but still it's being broadcast to a wider audience?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think it's gonna be hard to go back to anything that was normal, that was pre-pandemic behavior, you know what I'm saying, in terms of how because it forced us all to do things differently. And I think that's a part of growth. That's a part of growth. Sometimes you look at your personal life, sometimes we don't change unless something makes us change. And then all of a sudden we say, oh, wow, I could have been doing this all this time. This is a benefit to me now. So let me take this even further. So I don't think that live theater will just resort to just being on stage anymore. I think we'll continue to look at ways to reach farther than what we've been thinking before, and which I think is a great thing. I think it's wonderful, because a lot of times everybody can't get in a car and go fly to Broadway to see a show. It'd be nice to be able to stream that or tune in live and buy a ticket at the sofa and just sit there and feel like you're there in the room. And I think technology is limitless in terms of, so I think at some point we may get to some type of virtual experience where you feel like you are literally in the theater.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I'll see it continuing to grow, and we're pushing the envelope with that. So I'm excited to see where it takes us post-pandemic.
How does that change the economics of theater?
Well, I think it'd be a good thing, particularly for Black theater, because Black theater is notoriously struggling financially across the country. And a lot of times that depends on grant funding, and sometimes we get things that are trickled down to us and we're not first in line for the big bucks. And then a lot of times that money that goes to funding for diversity is going to larger white institutions that, their diversity looks like one Black play out of the season, but they get the large bulk of the funding. Mm-hmm. So we're in the, Black theater companies have also been in the struggle to get the financial support. But if you give a Black theater company access and means to create his own revenue stream, like the internet, like these live streaming things, I think it empowers us financially to be able to get subscribers, internet subscribers and followers that might be, if we're in Chicago and there's some Australia people that loves Congo Square Theater Company who will never come to the States, but they'll sit there and subscribe and watch our content. I just think it helps us to be a little less dependent on some of that grant funding that we've been fighting for all these years.
Yes, absolutely. You were talking about your history and how you got involved in acting and theater. For those who are aspiring to maybe get into that field right now, what do you tell them? What advice do you give people who are serious about trying to do what you do, either as a writer, actor, performer, whatever the case may be?
First thing I'll tell you, the why is the most important question to answer. And you really got to have an honest answer to that, right? And then you got to know, if you say, and it's not to judge you on your answer, right? Because you could say, why you want to do this? You say, well, I want to be a superstar. I want to be a celebrity. Okay. Then we're going to put your journey on that track, right? So we're going to focus on that. But if you say, my why is because I want to change the world, okay, then we're going to focus on that track, right? But you have to know your why. And it's not up to me to judge your why. It's up to you to know your why, so that every decision you make is getting you to that goal, and you know your purpose in it, right? So the other thing is preparation before opportunity, because you have to be prepared for the opportunities when they come, because there's no shortage of opportunities. If you're putting in work, if you're dedicated to it and you're grinding, opportunities are already there waiting for you. We get in this mindset of just looking at what opportunities we missed, or what opportunity, and Ken got this thing, man. Ken did that. I ain't done nothing, man. He's got 5 auditions. I ain't got none in 2 weeks. And then you start looking at it like that. Well, no, you have to trust that there's 10 opportunities waiting for you. It might not be on your timeline. It might not be coming the way when you want them to come or how you want them to come. But if it's kind of like gardening, right? So if you plant a seed and you do the work, you don't know exactly when that thing is going to sprout through the ground. You know it will. You have faith that something is going to grow from your labor. And so it's the same concept for me, is that if you put in the work, you have to know that at some point something's going to break through for you. Right now, the question in preparation is, are you prepared for that breakthrough? Because a lot of times we get the breakthrough and then we realize we just blew 10 years of hard work because we got the breakthrough and we weren't prepared for it. And now we set back another 4 or 5 years because we weren't prepared for the moment. So you really have to invest in preparation in your craft and what you have to offer to this industry, right? So that you know that if Tyler Perry calls me and says, I audition for Tyler Perry and I get the role of the butler on the Oval, that I am prepared enough to get into that situation and not fold or collapse or get stressed out and not deliver, because I've been preparing for opportunities for years, not knowing what the opportunity will be. So that's kind of the biggest thing, your why you're doing it, why you need to. It's not about why you want to do it. It's more about why do you have to do it, because it's going to take that kind of perseverance to survive this industry, because this is not a fair industry. It's not a kind industry. It's an industry that doesn't need you unless you got something to offer it, right? Mm-hmm. And then once what you have to offer is no longer of value, guess what? They're moving on to the next person. And you got to realize that this is an industry where you're putting an X on your chest and saying, criticize me. Tell me I'm not good enough. Tell me what's wrong with me. Tell me I'm too short. Tell me I'm not beautiful enough. Tell me my hips are not wide enough. Tell me I don't talk Black enough. Tell me all these things, right? So you're putting yourself in a line of fire. So you have to be emotionally and spiritually groomed and prepped to endure all that, so that you don't end up like sometimes we get these stories, these horror stories of, people out there on drugs and, alcohol, trying to find these vices to make themselves feel better because the industry has beat them up so much. So that's a part of your preparation. Your spiritual and emotional part is a part of the preparation. Your talent and craft is a part of the preparation. So that's kind of the biggest thing I can kind of say to anybody. Can do this. You can do pretty much anything you want to do if you want to commit to making it happen for yourself. And I also say put blinders on, because what you see on social media is not always what it is. It's not always reality. And sometimes we get caught up in going on social media and it looks like everybody's working except me. And then you see somebody say booked it. NCIS booked it. And then you like, I went to high school with that person. They don't know nothing about acting. They took one class and all of a sudden they booking the NCIS. But the reality is, what did they book? You know, you watch the show and they sitting at the back in the background drinking a cup of coffee. But you get caught up in the ideal of booked it on IG. And then you begin to comment and look at yourself like you're failing, or or it's like that's not fair, because I did that, you know, I auditioned for that show and I put in 3 hours, you know, 4 hours. I auditioned all day and I prepped all day. I put all this work and I didn't get the part, but then this person was less talented than me got the part. Okay, but that's the business. It is what it is. You got to accept that the business is not fair and the business is mentally ill. Because there's no rationale sometimes to what happens, right? Somebody, you know, Ken, you could say, you know what, I'm done with this, interviewing and all this stuff. I'm going to be an actor. And then next thing I know, a month from now, I turn on TV and Ken's the leading man in something. I'm like, what just happened? Where did his training go? Where did he put in the work? Well, that's the business. It can happen, right? And you just have to accept that that's what happens. It doesn't mean that you quit on developing yourself. You got to put blinders on and focus on you. And just know that what's in it for you is in it for you, but you put in that work, it's coming. You got to have faith that it's coming. So that's kind of the long-winded version of what I can say.
Definitely so. Well, we're at about 45 minutes in this conversation, and we wanted to take the last few minutes to answer questions. Kimberly, are you there?
I am here. Yes.
All right. Do you have any questions on chat that people want to know from Javon?
We sure do. Let's see, we have a 3-part question, it looks like. First question is, are you planning a sequel to After the Rose? And then second, what is it like working with Tyler Perry?
Well, we kind of talked about already what it's like working with Tyler. I haven't really thought of a sequel to After the Rose. If I did anything, it would probably be adapting it as a feature screenplay. I probably would expand it.
Great. And then next question, what are your thoughts about 7 plays by Black playwrights opening on Broadway this fall?
You know, I don't know which 7 plays they are, but and I know that, and I don't know a lot of information about this, but I know that Chuck Smith out of Chicago with the Goodman Theater, one of our premier Black directors, did a collection for years for the Theater Award Prize at Columbia University, Columbia College, I think, where he did a collection of anthology of 7 Black plays and will publish those plays every year. So the ideal of this, I don't know if it's connected because I don't know a lot of information about it yet, but the ideal of it, I think, is, it's great. But again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier about opportunities for people of color in this industry right now are just at another level. So I'm definitely excited about that.
Yeah, before we get to the next question, I just want to follow up on that because you've done work on Broadway. Broadway had to go dark for a long time. And, they've been struggling to come back, especially with New York being so hard hit by not only the first wave, but the second wave of COVID. What are your hopes and thoughts about Broadway and the opportunities that Broadway presents to people who have reached a certain level in your industry?
Well, I think, the one thing that's undeniable about all people in this country is, the world of entertainment for us is a part of our everyday life, right? We entertain, we know how to entertain, and we spend money on entertainment. And I think, this country, money rules this country. You know what I mean? So I think Broadway recognizes the value in Black in terms of entertainment. And I think, and I say that hesitantly because it's not a kind thing to say. You know what I mean? Because we want to feel like, oh, well, we're appreciated because we're who we are, not because we can bring dollars to the table. But then again, it's a business. You know what I'm saying? This industry is about making money. And it's about how we make money. Because for a long time we would hear, oh, well, we can't do Black films because they don't make money. We can't do this, blah, 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 because they don't make money. Then we say, well, dang, look at what Black Panther did. You're saying it broke records. Or look at what this movie did. You're saying we can't do these movies. But even when we was showing them, it was still, but they don't make money. We can't, blah, 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 blah. But now we get into a place where it's undeniable. You can't really continue to say that when the box office receipts are saying something different. And I think that what Broadway has known about us is obviously the musicals. We can sing and dance our butts off. right? But we got to get into some of these more pieces that don't require us to sing and dance to tell our stories, where we can tell a straight representation of our lives as Black people. And I think we're getting there. So I think so I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's going to happen. You know, and even more Black directors. From what I'm hearing, there's a lot more Black directors involved, a lot more Black producers. I think there's a read an article not too long ago about a Black producer now who owns or have bought into some theater, some Broadway houses. So that's going to change stuff, you know, on Broadway for us, because hopefully that means that we're going to follow. You know, so I think we're going to see a lot more of us represented in a different way, in a better way, on Broadway coming soon.
Okay, Kimberly, you got another one?
We sure do. Let's see, we have an audience member that wants to know, what was your experience working with the late Chadwick Boseman on your film short Heaven?
Oh man, I can't even just narrow it down to just that experience, because Chadwick and I go back. You know, I'll tell you this: we're from the same hometown. We didn't know each other when we were in Anderson together, because Chadwick was, I think, 3 or 4 years younger than me. So, you know, you're a senior in high school. You don't care about those freshman scrubs. So he was a nobody to be at home, because he was young. But I was dealing with his older relatives. So I knew of Chadwick at that time, but again, he was a younger kid, so didn't pay him any attention. It wasn't until Derek Sanders and I, Derek graduated from Howard University. He's the founding member of Concord Square Theater Company. We were roommates at the University of Pittsburgh, and we decided to take a tour of some cities to decide on which was the best city to start a new theater company, which is now Concord Square Theater Company. But one of our stops was at Howard University. And as we walk into the dorm room, Derek was like, "Hey man, I want to introduce you to this brother, me from Anderson." He said, and Derek said, "You're the only person, y'all the only 2 people I ever known that's from Anderson, South Carolina." And I said, "From Anderson?" I'm like, "Who is this?" I said, "I gotta meet this dude." Say he's from Anderson. I don't even want to believe it. I'm like, why would somebody say they're from Anderson, South Carolina? So I go in the room, and it's Chadwick's dorm room, and it's Chad. And he was like, "Oh, what's up?" You know, we connected. So that was when he was a freshman at Howard University. So I have all those years of a relationship with him. So to just talk about Heaven and that piece, which was the tail end of our time together, it's kind of hard for me to just pinpoint that, because Chadwick for me was a total experience. You know, I can't really separate a moment with him, because he was such a giant, and his spirit was so big, and he was so much about purpose and about intentions, and about Chad didn't waste time. He didn't waste talent, and he didn't waste time, and he didn't focus on anything or give time to anything that had no value to that. Which I think we also learn a little bit of that, because sometimes we get derailed or distracted by things that don't matter. And we could use that time and that energy on ourselves and our own dreams and goals and focus on. But he was one of the most grounded, focused individuals I know. And I'm just fortunate enough to have that kind of relationship with him, and be able to work with him as a director. I've performed in his play, Deep Azure. We did the Apollo. We did at Congo Square Theater. I've been directed by him. He's been directed by me. He's been in my plays. He directed Heaven. I'll tell you a funny moment about Heaven. I was, they were filming, and I was in the makeup room. We was at a hotel in LA, filming at a hotel, the Raggedy Hotel, because that's the set. And somebody comes in and say, Chad needs to see you. I was like, what's up? He needs to talk to you. And so I go out, and Chad takes me outside the hotel. It's in the middle of filming. He stops filming, and he takes me around the building. So we're in a private area outside the hotel. And this is like in the middle of the night in LA. He's like, "Man, what do you think about Heaven?" If you guys, I don't know if some of you may not have seen it, but he was like, so the character's name is Heaven. And he's like, "Well, what do you think about this, man? Trying to figure out if when they get into a scuffle," and Chad would always do his hands like this and put his hands on your shoulders. He was like, when they struggle on the ground, what do you think about if Heaven's wig falls off? And I said, "What?" He said, yeah. What if it just, because we're trying to get her to reveal her look under the wig. He was like, "What if the wig falls off? You think people are going to take that seriously?" I said, "Chad, no." He said, "No, man." I said, "No, people are going to laugh." I was like, there's no way her wig is gonna fly off in the middle of a fight and people not finding that funny. So we went back and forth. We had this conversation for like 20 minutes because he was trying to figure it out. And I was like, nah, I don't see any way this is gonna happen in this dramatic moment where her wig flies off her head. And particularly our people are not gonna crack up at that, right? And so he ended up finding a moment to fix that. But that's one of the funny moments I always think about with him is that conversation, because I was like, we out here trying to figure out this wig and a fight. And to the point that we was going through it, we was walking through it, like we was actually doing the choreography and doing the scuffle to see what if it fell off at this point, what if it fell off at this point, or fell off like this. But that is how detailed, and it was important to him. It was important to him to find the right thing in the storytelling of it. So that's who Chad was, man. He never wasted time or talent.
Well, we definitely saw that as fans as well. His performances, you know, Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown. I was a James Brown fanatic coming up, man.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you
he
something
kept
interesting about James Brown, man.
Yeah.
Because I was a huge James Brown fan, and I was helping him with his audition for Jackie Robinson, and it was one of those nights where Chadwick just didn't want to stop. He was like, "Hey, man, one more time." I was like, "Chad, you got it, man." We was in LA, we was in Inglewood. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he had to audition the next day. And we was going through. I was reading Branch Rickey, and he was like, "I was like, look, man, that's it, man. You got it." He was like, "No, one more time." Dad, I'm falling asleep, bro. So, but when he got the James Brown thing, he actually came to me. He wasn't sure. He was like, "Look, man, you think I should play James Brown?" And I was like, "Dude, who else, bro? I mean, we from Anderson, South Carolina. You know, like, that's, you know, there's this whole debate about, you know, people from South Carolina love to say James Brown is from that, you know, Augusta, and you know, South Carolina, other people in Georgia want to claim him, you know, but I'm like, dude, we're the roots of where he come from, and I'm like, you have to play him. And as you saw the outcome of that, man. An amazing job.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, believe it or not, Javon, we are out of time. We got to call it quits right now. You know, as they say,
unfortunately,
we got to get on up, man. So this is it. But it was so much fun to be able to talk to you and to pick your mind. I'm sure the people who are watching this webinar enjoyed it as well. Javon Johnson, just an amazing performer and individual. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here.
Thank you, Ken. I had a good time, man.
All right. Take care.
Right.